All right, as I told you before, this Shabbat will be the anniversary of the passing away of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak. Here's a picture. Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak. Do we have it? Oh, no, I got the wrong one here. 1 minute. No, it's not working. Huh? Oh, here, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak. There is his picture, and he was the Rebbe of Chabad since Taf Shin Yud, which since Taf Reish Pei, which means 1920. So from 1920 to now, which means it's 100 years, 101 years since he was the Rebbe. And also, 70 years from his passing away. 71, this is the 71st year. So as I said, he issued a Hasidic discourse to be said on the 10th of Shvat, which that's the day that his mother passed away, and also the day that his grandmother passed away. But it ended up that he also passed away on that day. when it was already issued, these Maimorim, these were discourses that he had said years earlier. But when it was issued, he was already totally paralyzed. He almost couldn't speak. But when he passed away, it was still a tremendous shock to everybody. Nobody really believed that it would happen, because he was a person that was alive in essence, and essentially it's really true that he really was. So this discourse that he put out for the day that he was going to pass away has 20 chapters in it, 20 chapters, 20 paragraphs. And the Rebbe, as soon as the Rebbe took over, his successor, the Lubavitcher Rebbe took over, as every year he would say an explanation on another one of these paragraphs. So it comes out that this year is an explanation on the 11th paragraph. So let's just go over this today. This is what we'll do today. Let's learn this 11th paragraph that the Rebbe said. This whole week we've been learning the Rebbe's explanation that he made in 1981 on this chapter. In other words, every year he would say another chapter. So for the 40 years that he was Rebbe, that our Rebbe was Rebbe, as every year he would say explain another one of the 20 chapters. So he explained every chapter twice at least. So because sometimes he would say on one Shabbat, he would give 3 explanations. So this week we learned the Rebbe's explanation on this paragraph that we're going to learn today, on the 11th of the 20 paragraphs, the 11th paragraph. We learned that this week. Remember about the soldiers and about the king opens up his storehouses so that the soldiers should win, and the storehouse is the fear of God, a healthy fear of God, that he gives to all of his soldiers, and it ended up that the soldiers are essentially the Jewish people. That's why they came out of Egypt, is in order to reveal the truth in the world, the godliness in the world, that reveal the Creator and the creation. In order to do this, it takes self-sacrifice. So that's what the Rebbe explained. But let's look at the original. That's what we'll learn today. So this is what the Chabad Hasidim are going to be occupied in. This Shabbat is an explanation of this paragraph and how to put it into action. Okay, Lever Ba'omek, let's explain in a little more depth. Mashi Yisrael, what the fact that the Jewish people are called the armies of God. Tziva'os Hashem. Now this name Tziva'os, as we said before, is one of the names of God also. The Jews are called the armies of God. That's here. That's not a holy name. But God is sometimes called Hashem Tziva'os. Tziva'os, that's a name of one of the names of God. Some people don't even say the name or write it. They write Tzivakos. Shehu Me'azayin Shemos. This is one of the 7 names that it's forbidden to erase. Like if you see the 7 names of God, you're not really supposed to erase any name of God. Even the name in the word God, if it's written down on a piece of paper, you're not supposed to erase. Or in Russian, Boga, or in Spanish or something, Dios, Latin, or you're not supposed to erase those names either. But there's 7 names which are forbidden from the Torah, forbidden to erase them. If they're written somewhere, to erase them, and really you're not even supposed to say them unless it's in the context of learning Torah or a sentence of Torah. And one of the names of God that are holy is this name, Tzavaos. It's a name of God, Hashem Tzavaos. Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzavaot. It's one of God's names. B'Shem Zeh, this name, Nitgal al Neviim, but this name is not written in the Torah. It was written by means of the prophets. It was written by means of the prophets. Let's see what it says. No, the B'Torah known is Karshem Savos. It says that Chana mentioned the name when she was praying for her son to be born, Shmuel. Chana said the name of V'Nizkar Rak Tzavos Hashem. In the Torah, what is mentioned when the Jews got out of Egypt, they're called the armies of God, Tzavos Hashem. And this name, Tzavos, a holy name of God, is not mentioned in the 5 books of Moses. It's a name that came afterwards. But when it's mentioned in the Torah that Tzavos Hashem got out of Egypt, that's talking about the Jews. So we see that God is called Tzavos and the Jewish people are called Tzavos. When God is called Tzavaot, then it's a holy name. When the Jews are called Tzavos, it's not a holy name, but it has a connection to it. It's the same name. What is this Mila? Kolomer, like it says, Bishvil Esa Mila. Why is it for what exactly quality that the Jews have that they're called by the name of Tzavot Hashem? That they're called by the same name as God. They're called, and this name means a name of war, armies of God. Torah, this is given to the Jewish people when they came out of Egypt specifically. And when the Jews came out of Egypt, they're called armies of God. But and the interesting thing is that when the Jews got out of Egypt, in Egypt, first of all, God did everything. He was the one that fought the battles against the Egyptians, and he split the sea. And when they came into Israel, it should have been the same thing. If the Jews would not have delayed or sinned in the desert, then God would have taken care of all their problems. And so what type of war exactly are they supposed to be fighting? B'Kain said B'Shari Ora, and there's also a book, a Kabbalah book, which is called Shari Ora by Rebbe, I think Yehuda Giktilia. It's a Kabbalah book. B'Shem Tzavaot, Hu B'Netzach V'Hod. It says this name of God, that's Tzavaot, this is in the aspects of Netzach, victory and surrender. From there, call all of the wars in the world. Wars in the world. It's a very interesting thing. War is a very, very interesting. It's a terrible thing, war. But on the other hand, it's very, very interesting what war is. And people are willing, basically, that's what sports is. Basically, that's what sports is. People are overcoming obstacles, and especially when they overcome another team. There's another team or another person or whatever that's really excellent, reached the tremendous levels of excellence that he has conquered himself. Right? He's the best tennis player in the world or whatever. And he's overcome all of the obstacles of, being fast and being, reacting quickly and hitting the ball and etc. And they put him against the other person who he claims he wants to be the best in the world. Oh, so it's competition, a war. What comes out of the whole thing? Absolutely nothing, except for victory. Victory. And it's very, very interesting. People see it because victory touches at the essence of the soul. Now, man is made in the image of God. That what it means that man is made in the image of God. That's the basis of all the Kabbalistic teachings, because of course God has not got an image. God is not God. God is above being infinite. Infinity is a creation of God. So God has no form or no this. So what does it mean that we're created in God's form? This is an amazing mystery. And that's what all the books of Kabbalah are written about. But the fact of the matter is it's true. So just as victory is a very important thing by us, and it touches the essence of our soul. And because of that, it's made nowadays into a multi-trillion, quadrillion, whatever dollar business of sports and competitions. God says, what is this name of God? It gives him tremendous pleasure, victory. It says, when I fight against the evil people, the sinners, I am called Savot. Okay, now according to Hasidic teachings, a sinner does not necessarily have to be a person that's going to go to hell. A sinner is not a person that he does real terrible things. In order to understand what a sinner is, we have to understand what good is. And then we'll see what exactly a sinner is. So according to Judaism, good is the revelation of God in the world, like in the Holy Temple. Now, there's no place in the world that's like the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple revealed the Creator. People would go to the Holy Temple, they would feel that they're being created. They would feel that the whole world is an amazing, miraculous creation, every detail. And that God is creating everything, all the angels and all the people and all the... Now, the whole world is not like that. Therefore, the whole world is called, in comparison to that, that's called bad. It's called bad. Right? A person could be a good piano player. He's a good piano player, plays in bars, he's really good, makes records, right? And then you compare him, they put him in the competition of the classical pianists that they're playing, these tremendously Liszt and these things, and the person doesn't know, he can't even move his fingers, doesn't know anything, right? There we go. Maybe giving birth and creating something to draw, to make music is having victory. Well, listen, to a certain degree, it is, but it depends. Victory usually means that there's something standing in your way and opposing, right? So giving birth, yes, it's true to a certain degree, but more victory is, let's say, a woman that can't give birth. She can't give birth. She has some sort of a problem and she can't give birth. And the doctors tell her, if you do this X, Y, then you can. And then she gives birth. Oh, that's like victory. She overcame an obstacle. To a certain degree, getting married is like that. Right? Two people are alone. In order to get two people together, you have to first of all find the person, and they have to be fit one to the other, and then they have to get along, and it has to be the proper time and the proper this, and then everything all of a sudden fits together, get married. In a way, that's sort of like a victory. It's a victory over over separation, right? A true wedding we're talking about, in a certain way. Creating a point. If, let's say, you have Beethoven, he was deaf, right? And so he overcame his obstacles and he created something, and that's like a victory. That's a victory over something. But you're right, to bring something from non-existence into existence in a certain way, of course, it's a certain type of a victory in a way. Yes, a person has to pull out. Let's say the person himself is not inspired, and he has to inspire himself to pull out. He has difficulties, he has obstacles, he has this, to overcome them. Right? That's what they make movies out of, right? A movie of the life of this composer, of this writer, of this person. If the person was just gifted, and he was genius, and he just wrote, and he had no troubles in his life whatsoever, then it's not much of a movie. It's not very interesting. It's not much of a victory that he had, right? Not much of a victory. So these people who are just, they're just natural geniuses and everything just comes to them easily. They just go to them and ask them. But I don't think there are too many people like that. and pretty much everyone has to fight battles in order to, in their life. You have people like, Mozart, he was a tremendous genius, but he had his trials and his tribulations, and people did like him and they didn't like him. You have Einstein, in the beginning, he was ignorant and they didn't accept this thing. There had to be some sort of a opposition and a victory. That makes, that's what life is about. If a person is just a natural genius and he's just better than everybody else, so it's not much of a, not much of a victory. You get Superman comes from Krypton or something like that, and he comes in and he says, I'm going to be a professional. I need some money. I want to be a professional boxer. So he goes into the ring, and every punch, nobody can punch him. His punches have no effect whatsoever, and he just touches people and knocks them out. It's not exciting anymore. No one's going to go to, Superman against 10 people. It's not interesting. Wouldn't be interesting. It has to be that there's some sort of a challenge, some sort of difficulty, some sort of a. So it depends. If it's difficult to make the music, or difficult, or some problem of giving, then the victory over something, then that's called victory. Well, God puts us in this world for this victory. Even Adam, the first man that he came in, he was tremendously gifted, but still we see that there was a temptation. He was supposed to overcome it, right? And he didn't. God said, you can eat from all the trees you want to, just from this one tree, don't eat. And specifically from that tree, all of a sudden he had a tremendous desire. He couldn't hold himself back, and he had to eat from the tree. And listen, basically Adam, the first man, he was a man. He was a human being. He was a human being just like we are. He had, the super increased and enhanced powers and abilities and consciousness and etc. But he was a human being. He was the first human being. And he's just like us. There's things that we have to overcome. Worries, problems, physical, emotional, intellectual problems to overcome. That's the victory we have to have. Now the world is so tremendously dark, as we really have to make it. We have a tremendous battle to fight. It says, what's the battle? What's our weapon? Our weapon is light. Our weapon is light. To ignore the bad. But in order to do that, you have to be a real soldier. If so, moving the Chapt Tzavaos, this name Tzavaos is the name of war. Okay, I hope that answered the question. In this book, it says that the name Tzavaos, this shows on war. We have to understand what is the connection between war to this aspect of God, which is called victory and surrender. That from this should be coming all the wars in the world. All the wars in the world. You see, like in the cases, let's just take one of the most recent. You have Napoleon, but you have Hitler. And all of a sudden they stand up and they say, let's make a war against the world. Let's conquer. It all belongs to us. We have to free the world from something. And all of a sudden, all the people get inspired to go and make a war from nowhere. It's just to make a war. In Napoleon's time, after Hitler stood up, when he got where he improved the economy over there in Germany, they really had no pressing need to go and make a war against everybody. True, he convinced everybody, but it was not, economically they were okay, and what socially, and they had their culture and they had everything. What they have to make a war for? He invented an enemy. We have to make a victory. We have to make a victory. It touches the essence of a person's soul, that the soldiers are willing to go and give their lives and kill people and do things they would never usually do for the sake of victory. Says the Rebbe, the whole idea of victory is only relevant by a gadol, by a great person. The mishu shafel be'erech, a person that is humble and feels that he's nothing. Hine im yomar negdo, if a person stands against him, lo yenatzech, he won't have a. Elo yachol lanot ba'azut. Maybe he can yell back at him or something, but he's not going to complain. Right? If someone stands against a person that he feels that, I'm somebody, nobody's going to take away my, my house, my reputation. But if a person is a humble person, he feels that he's nothing. So, we're firing him from you. You're getting fired from your job. You're a janitor. We're firing. Okay. We're taking away the Sefer Torah. All right. What can I do? We're taking away. Can't put on tefillin anymore. All right. No problem. He's not going to. Maybe he can yell or something like that, but he's not going to make a war. Making a war, actually doing something, is very rare. Like I say, they make movies about people like that. But only a person that is high, who considers himself to be very important, has this aspect of victory. If someone says anything against him or tries to take something from him or does something against his will, he'll stand up against them in order to take out his righteousness. In other words, if you're fighting for a really important cause, that's what the Rebbe wants to say. A person that's fighting for a really important cause, even if that cause is himself, but it's really, really important to him, then he's willing to even risk his life and make a war. That's what it says, Talmud Chacham. It says any Torah scholar, it says in matters of Torah, as he has to be zealous and jealous, says like a snake. He has to, in other words, no one is going to, right? I want the truth. Anyone who stands against me, he'll have to prove himself. Because if he doesn't, then I'm not accepting it. I'm going to knock him down. I'll knock down what he says. Rashi says, no convenoter, eva belibo kanachash. That he puts it in that he should have in his heart the desire for victory like a snake. In other words, that he's going to wipe out all opposition. It says, what does it mean? Why a snake? I asked a question in the Gemara 1 second. There's a command in the Torah. You're not allowed to take revenge, and you're not allowed to be, how do you say, they say vengeful. There's a word for it. You're not allowed to hate people, to take, there's a word, jealous or zealous. You're not allowed, it's a mitzvah in the Torah, you're not allowed to take revenge on someone, and you're not allowed to hold a grudge. That's what it is. You're not supposed to hold a grudge. Right? It says that you go to someone, you ask, listen, do me a favor, can I borrow your screwdriver? And the person says, get lost now, you're not going to borrow anything from me. So the next day he comes to you and says, listen, I just broke my screwdriver. Can I borrow one from you? He says, but you yesterday, you told me you weren't going to give me yours. Now you want to take mine? Right? Okay, I'm not like you. I'll give you it. Oh, he says you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to hold a grudge. And for sure, you're not allowed to say, listen, get lost. You refused me yesterday, so feel it on yourself. I'm not going to loan to you today. That you shouldn't do either. That's revenge. It's forbidden to take revenge, and it's forbidden to hold a grudge. So how does it say a Torah scholar is supposed to? Nevertheless, it says that a Talmudic scholar in matters of Talmud, in matters of Judaism, that he can hold a grudge and to be vengeful. That it's not chas v'shalom, it's not talking about even he's obligated to do. It's not talking about that he takes revenge and holds a grudge that the Torah forbids. Like the rabbis say, this is the Torah is talking about money or something like that, to be vengeful. Somebody takes money from you, you're not supposed to. This is not for the sake of money or property or something, or comes by means of money. This is forbidden. First of all, a person has to be a Torah scholar. And a Torah scholar is a person, what does it mean? Talmud Chacham means not just a Torah scholar, but it means that he has to be a scholar of wisdom. He has to learn from the truth. And he is totally subjugated to the truth. That's why we see in the Talmud, there's all these arguments. Because each one held a really true opinion. And we have to come to which one is more valid to be put into action. That's the whole idea of the Talmud. Hainu, the call is Yosef and Yonasov that the person, everything he does is for wisdom. Shazel b'chalalos, that's the idea of victory. Victory is only in a person that is great in physical things we're talking about. That's generally not good. Or we're talking about spiritual things, which is good. Kol mishagadol yoter, a person who is greater, more, then the victory is more important by him. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's right. Therefore, a king, that he is the greatest of all the people. The king is that he's the chosen one of all the people. He's greater than anyone else. Like it says by King Saul. It says, Ein ish mi b'nei Yisrael tov mimenu. No one was better than him. Mishichmo l'mayla. He was from his shoulders and above, higher than all the rest of the people. And it explains what does it mean? It means that where his heart was, his emotions, that's where everybody else's intellect was. And his head was totally above everybody else. He knew how to make the right choices. He knew. King Saul. And therefore, therefore, by a king, it's more relevant the idea of victory, more legalot ritzono v'chefzo, to bring out his victory to the people. This is also the reason of the war, in order to be victorious. In war, there are two things, two types of war. One type of war, and we're talking about the war of God, of Hashem, against those people, against those ideas. The Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe once said, I never say anything bad about people. I don't make war against people. I make war against ideas. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said. We're making here the war of ideas. There's two types of war. One type of war that a king makes is shalal ulabuz boz, to take spoils, to enrich the coffers of the country. A base, the other one is milchama, the other type is a war just for the sake of victory. That things should be the way he wants. This is the main war. And is the to bring out its victory. The that this war, in order to take spoils, this is a war of just power of gavura bilvad. It's just to see who's the strongest. Right? I want your money. That was like what Hitler did. Milchama b'chalalos, and a war in general, namely what? What does it mean? Kolomar haskala sheb'milchama, the strategies of the war. Ulotzi nitzachon is to make a victory. That it should be according to his will. That's sort of like what Napoleon did. Napoleon, he inspired the people that he wants to have freedom and liberty and fraternity, and he's going to knock down the kings. He's going to free all of mankind. And that was Napoleon. In the end, of course, he was an evil person, but nevertheless, he was a tremendously high. He was like a king. So his thing wasn't so much to make money and to conquer countries just for the sake of conquering. At least that's what he claimed. His thing was just to spread the ideals of freedom and liberty and etc. Of course, in the end, it was exactly the same thing as everybody else. I'm saying, but nevertheless, that was the idea. And who then was his big enemy? The first Rebbe of Chabad was his big enemy. The first Rebbe of Chabad won. But with Napoleon, with his ideas, he conquered the hearts of all the great Torah scholars, all the leaders of Judaism. They agreed with him. They didn't want to fight against him. And the first Rebbe of Chabad, that's a true idea of a king. He said, in no way will Napoleon win. I'm not going to let him. His ideas and we're not talking about his viciousness and things like that. No, he was okay with the Jews. Napoleon, best friend, right? Let the Jews do what they wanted to, but he was against God. He was against God. He wanted to make himself as God. And everyone agreed with him. Okay, he said, you can do what you want to 100%, you just have to pay allegiance to me. But the first Rebbe of Chabad was a true king. He said, no way, I'm not going to let you do it in any way. I'm not going to surrender. Victory. And that victory we have to make now, the same thing. The forces of the world are telling, just, do what you want. And we have to make a war against that. But also this idea, this victory is also when there's someone that stops you. Then there is a victory. The below neged, that if there's no opposition, then it's not relevant to have a victory at all. That's the first commandment of the Torah, the 10 Commandments. I am God that took you out of Egypt. It could have just said, I'm God. Here I am. I'm creating the whole world. But they didn't. It said, I am God that took you out of Egypt, because Egypt was the opposition to God. God is creating Egypt. This is a big mystery. That's why this week's Torah parsha says, Boel Paro, come. He said to Moshe, come with me to Paro. I'll take you to this inner deep secret of the inner the power of Paro, why I created something and why Paro has such tremendous power and why I'm giving you the ability to overcome it, but you have to have total self-sacrifice. You have to make the choice. If a person desires something and someone's against it, then he stands. Then there's the idea of victory. Like I said, with sports, in order to make a victory, the king is willing to open up all of his storehouses. The hon yakar of his deep, most precious hidden treasures. And we learned in the Mimer, what's the deepest, most valuable thing to the king is that the people should have fear of him. If his people don't hold him in awe and are afraid of the king, not punishment, but they know that what the king says is right, and that what they think is not necessarily right, and they don't want to do anything that's wrong. And only the king knows what's right. Therefore, we cannot go against the king. It's tremendous. It's deep, deep, essential, healthy fear. This is the the inner treasure house of the king. The king takes everything he's got for years and years, and he gives it out to the people of the war in order that it was hidden in order that they should win the battle. He squanders everything. The midas and nitzachon is lamayla miratzon v'onev, and that's this idea of Kabbalah, of teaching the teachings of Kabbalah through Chassidut. They're taking the deep ideas of Kabbalah and putting them into to digestible form, like the example, the story I gave you about the king with the throne. It's a big problem. It's a big problem to do a thing like that, because as soon as you start spreading out the ideas of Kabbalah in a proper way, it gives the opportunity to people spreading it out in the improper way. Ideally, properly, the ideas of Kabbalah are supposed to bring people to do Torah and do the commandments. Jews to do the Torah and the commandments. That's supposed to be the idea, that you feel the godliness. Pleasure, no matter how high it is, that the king has in his inner treasure houses, it means absolutely nothing to him as far as victory goes. This is because victory is above pleasure. And even more, also a person's life, he throws away. The king himself is willing to throw away. He goes and he fights with the together in the army. This already puts himself on the same level of the people. Maybe they won't fear him so much. And not only that, he's even willing to risk his life for the sake of victory. That's the same thing the Rebbe wants to point out to us, how important it is that we have victory over our own negative and selfish tendencies. Because of the necessity of winning, the king himself is willing to go into the battle. Because victory is in the essence of the soul more than any of the other powers of the soul. Victory. That's what we see, right? In war, soldiers are willing to go out and die for the cause. But if they die, what are they going to get out of it? They're not going to get freedom, and they're not going to enjoy the victory or anything. They don't care. They want victory. That's all. This is above anything that comes in pleasure, in revelation. Therefore, the king is willing not only to give away all of his power and all of his treasures. He's willing to even give away his own life for victory. And how much more so, he's willing to squander all the treasures that he has. How does it go? And it goes like this: in the time of war. Now, this, of course, this is all a metaphor, and the outcome is what is us in this world. We're fighting a battle for the creator of the universe to reveal him in the world, that he should be over all powers that conceal him, to make the whole world into a holy temple. It goes like this: in the time of war, the king opens up all the treasure houses and he gives them by means of the ministers. Cain. Cain. Just 1 second. Okay, יש הרבה שם. אבא שלך יודע, יש הרבה. על יד הפסנתר, בצד ימין. אני יוצא עוד 5 דקות, 3 דקות. I'm sorry. My grandson wanted something. First of all, what is it that the king, he opens up all the treasure houses and he gives it to the officers, the generals, and then, but the main thing is the simple foot soldiers. That's me and you. So the Rebbes of Chabad have opened up all of the treasure houses. Namely, they taught all the ideas of Hasidut, and they also spent all their time answering questions and helping people and giving blessings and giving directions and sending emissaries all over the world, especially the previous Rebbe and the present Rebbe. And this is also the same thing with God. God has this hidden treasure, which is the fear of God. Like it says, Yiftach Hashem l'chat otzru atov. May God open up his hidden treasures. And from this, matnas chinam chanenu, that God opens up his hidden, deep, deep treasures, which is the essence of our soul. And at the time of the war, he opens up and gives it all to everything, to the officers, that they're the officers over the soldiers. But the main thing is bishvil hachayil. The main thing is the simple foot soldier, that we have to have self-sacrifice. And like I've said before, was told me the story by one of my teachers, Rabbi Mendel Futterfast. He said that once, he doesn't remember if it was the Tsar or if it was Napoleon, he had to go over this river and there was no bridge, and the soldiers immediately laid down in the river, one on top of the other, so that he would be able to go over, even though that they knew that there was assured death. But they didn't even think. All they thought about was this: the king wants to go over. They went. Is it a true story? Is it not? But nevertheless, it could be a true story. We see that soldiers are willing to lay down their lives for the sake of victory, and the victory of who? Of the president or the king or the emperor or whatever. Because the ones that really bring the victory are the foot soldiers. And that's us. We are in the world in order to make light, to reveal the truth in the world, that God is creating everything and that God has a purpose, and that the world is being created according to the Torah. And the purpose is that people should live in accordance to the way the Creator wants them to live. But everybody, in order to do this, you have to be a soldier. And the soldier means that you have to do the will of God, Ratzon Shel Makom, the Naged, to oppose the opposition. And for a person, which the opposition in this case is mostly our own negative ideas and selfishness, etc. And to oppose this, in order to do this, God helps us, and he helps us big time. He opens up the deep treasure houses in order to win the battle against all opposition. That is the theme of this year's Basi Lgani. We are soldiers. Our enemy is darkness, ignorance, selfishness, and our allies are the Torah and Hashem and the tzaddikim that will help us to be victorious in this battle to bring Mashiach now. Shalom. Have a good Shabbat, a good day with Mashiach now.